Hi, welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, we're going to be talking about the tariffs in America.
Will that additional 50% go into effect tomorrow?
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow.
Now, this is not going to be a political rant at all. I'm really going to try and stay on track and focus on what the potential impacts are going to be for the RC hobby, predominantly in America, but also this will ripple out across the UK, Europe, and everything, and what we could possibly see moving forward. The first thing I wanted to do was to look at the manufacturers and see where they're predominantly producing their kits from at the moment. So the first one that I went and jumped on was the Traxxas. So I was really interested in Traxxas. Now, Traxxas, obviously, their headquarters is based in Texas, USA, and I just have received the Minimax. Now, on the box of the Minimax, it says it's made in Taiwan. I then looked at my Slash 4x4 Ultima, and that again was also made in Taiwan. Then I went and had a look at Team Associated as well, and I've just got the RC10 four-wheel drive that arrived, I don't know, a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, and on that box, sure enough, it says made in Taiwan. Then I went and looked at Yokomo, as I have the box for the 870C that came out 2 years ago, but still going to be pretty much one of the newest ones that I've got, and again, made in Taiwan. So we're seeing a big trend that a lot of these kits are being made in Taiwan. But then what about things like Tamiya, for instance? Well, I went and had a look, and the M-06 box that I have here says it's made in the Philippines. Then I looked at the Egress, and actually that says that was made in Japan. So there's different areas for Tamiya. Obviously, you've got the likes of like Relalo being Chinese, obviously is going to be coming directly from China. We'll come back and we'll talk about Relalo in a little bit of time. Then I actually looked at Kyosho and their Phantom EP four-wheel drive, you know, the gold one, limited edition. That was actually made in China. But then I looked at their NSR 500 bike, the one that I've got down here, and that actually says it's made in Japan. I also was really interested to see about like the Genova from the G-Force, and that was made in Taiwan as well. So that takes us to the next thing. What's it going to cost to import these to America now that the tariffs have been put in place by Donald Trump? Well, it's not as good as you think. Obviously, straight away, you're like, oh, China's going to be the big one, and that's what everybody's focusing on. Yes, I can understand that, being that you're looking at 54% import tax from China to the US. Now, originally there was 20% already, and now they've just added on top an additional fee, so 54%. So anything coming from China that was going to go to the US is not 54% more, it's just the 34% addition, but 34% is a lot. But Taiwan, so you're like, okay, things are coming from Taiwan, that's a lot easier. Yes, but you're still looking at 32% increase on imports. Now, a lot of people, I think it's starting to come to the mainstream media now that who pays tariffs, and it's not a tariff that you put on the company manufacturing it, it's the company that imports it. And this is where things get a little bit more painful, because the people who are paying this tariff are going to be the American consumer. Because what's manufactured in China is paid for by the importer. What do I mean by that? Well, Traxxas will pay a manufacturer in China, or sorry, Taiwan, to manufacture the Minimax. The Minimax will cost X amount, fully done, put together, in the box, manual, everything, and then they are sold to Traxxas, and Traxxas pays for each one at obviously a lower cost than what they're selling it. That's business. Then it's imported into America, and Traxxas will have to pay the import tax on it, the import tax tariff. So that means that Traxxas has to then cover that cost. How does it cover its cost? Well, it has a few ways. The first one is it just puts it straight on the price of each unit, works out the cost, puts the additional price in. And we'll come to some of the prices in a little while. The problem is that you, to add an additional 34% onto a retail price, business, you can't just do that, because there's only so much people are going to pay for a loaf of bread. It's, you know, there is a limit to what someone is physically going to pay versus just going, I'm not going to buy that. So what businesses tend to do is they'll try and smooth out as much as possible. What do I mean by that? Well, they will go back to China and have to renegotiate per unit cost to see if they can lower a bit. So they might get 4% off. So the China manufacturer will swallow a 4% decrease in profit for him or her, or whoever owns the manufacturing side. Then the Traxxas themselves will look and go, well, our profit margin is X, so we're going to have to lower our profit margin. So they will absorb some. Then they'll put a percentage of it on the actual price of the unit. And that's how they slowly try to smooth out the price point, so that it's not a case of, oh, I was going to buy a slash at this price and suddenly it's like 53% more expensive 2 days later. They won't do that, because it will shock their customers and they won't sell any slashes. What they'll tend to do as well is obviously the running costs for Traxxas, the overheads, not the manufacturing overheads, the business overheads, they will need to still cover some of that. So they'll probably end up putting a little bit of price increase across all its global sales to try and offset a little bit outside America as well. So that's kind of how a business would tend to try and smooth out this massive increase. But as you're seeing, this increase is so large that we're still going to see a big chunk of that going into the actual price. So I looked at, today I went and I looked at what it would cost to buy a slash 4x4 Ultima at A Main Hobbies. I just picked one that I knew off the top of my head. Currently you're looking at $499.95. If Traxxas then decided just to add that to the retail price, it would go from $499 to $659.93 at 32% if it was manufactured in Taiwan. Pretty sure most people in America are going to go, yeah, I'm not paying an extra $160 on a slash instantly. So you can see why they'll default back to trying to smear it out a little bit. If they were to have the slash made in China, it would go from $499 up to $769. And no one is going to buy a slash at $769. And I'm just talking about Traxxas now, but it'd be the same for all of them. Everybody having manufacturing in Taiwan. So that would be Team Associated, Yokomo, Tam of Tamiya, Kyosho, pretty much everybody. The manufacturers do have options. They can move things around. Now, this might actually make having some more things manufactured in Japan. I actually didn't look up what the Japan import price is. I'll put it here. That will obviously dictate if it's, I can't remember if it's just 10% or if it's massive. So this is a devastating aspect for Chinese RC manufacturers, because that puts them in a really difficult position. One that I'm a big fan of is Relalo. Relalo to me are a really good manufacturer, trying very hard to make good quality RC cars to try and bring that competition to other brands. That's going to put them at a massive disadvantage, being that they're looking at 54% increase on imports, especially if they're doing it themselves. Now, if they're going to try and break into America, it's going to be really difficult. So how do they do it? Whether you buy directly from Relalo, but then again, that means you as a consumer are going to pay it as it's imported. And you're not going to buy a Relalo RC and then pay 50% additional charge. You just won't do it. So this is going to be really tough for a lot of hardworking Chinese RC manufacturers who sell outside of China. So we're definitely across the board going to see prices going up in America. But I also think we're going to see this everywhere else. As like I mentioned before, all the manufacturers around the world are going to have to try and offset some of this loss by upping the price everywhere. For instance, obviously Traxxas sells worldwide, so it's going to put up its UK sales by a little bit, I would guess. This is purely me guessing, by the way. The same for like Team Associated. They've got to try and get a little bit more back to cover those costs, because they're going to have to take a hit themselves as well, and they need to try and protect their profit margins as best they can. So this is a horrendously difficult time for RC. Especially as the biggest issue, and this is one that we've been seeing for quite a while, RC hobby is not a necessity. RC hobby is a fun thing. So the problem is that obviously in America, everything is going to get more expensive. Literally everything. Raw materials that are imported, right the way up to manufactured parts, across the board. Energy is going to get more expensive. Any kind of imported food or anything like that is going to drive up the price. But also, if you are a manufacturer in America, well, this is great because you can put your prices up because because all the imports competitors is going to get more expensive. So we're going to see a big push in America, which is why if you look at the markets at the moment, they've absolutely tanked massively. The biggest drop in 2 days in history, I think, was one headline. Didn't check it, but you can understand. And obviously looking at my own investments, yeah, it's been an expensive couple of days. So the other side of it is, well, okay, so brand new kits are going to get more expensive. What about the used market? Well, this is really interesting, and obviously on the surface you would say prices are going to go up in all used, because if new kits are getting more expensive by a big margin, 20-30%, used market is obviously going to be dragged up as well. So this would be very good for people that have already got big collections. But there's a bit of a caveat for that, and it's a big point, and that is, if you're putting all your money that you earn into paying all your bills and your electricity and your food, and we've had this point for quite a while, there is no money left over for you to buy fun RC stuff, especially if you've got a family. Now, a lot of people that are into RC are older like me, so still have a mortgage, but maybe slightly smaller mortgage than anybody younger. So maybe in a more senior position, so have a little bit more expendable income. But things have got so expensive that this is going to be pressing down even more on used prices. And I've seen over the last year or so what cars would come on and would sit there and people are not buying them. Yes, they're still at a reasonably high price, nowhere near what they were at the boom, but they're sitting there because no one's buying them. And they're sitting there for quite a while. Some very desirable cars are sitting there for quite a long time. Classic example, I've got my eye on a JRX-T that's in the UK, which is very rare, and it's been up for now 2.5 weeks, and no one's bought it. Whereas in the boom, that would have been gone in a day for sure. Just as soon as it was up, it would have been sold. So we've got this seesaw aspect to it. Personally, I think things are going to get a lot more painful for the American market. So I think used prices will probably contract even more. In the UK side of it, we've got a 10% tariff, which is the default small one. Not really going to make a great deal of difference in the UK. The UK has already had a massive cost of living crisis, and it still just continues. Prices have just gone up again. All the, the electricity, all that kind of thing. Insurances have got more expensive. Yeah, so I think nothing massive is going to change in the UK. My only concern in the UK is the UK governments, be that whatever party, they're all the same. They like to grab as much money as possible. And if there's any way that they can increase a money stream and blame it on someone else, this is really good. So, for instance, they could retaliate with tariffs and say, okay, well, America has done this, so we're going to raise a tariff. The problem is that all they're doing is punishing the UK population, because it will just make all the imports from America to the UK more expensive, but then the government obviously makes that money. So that's a really, really desirable thing for a government, because they can blame someone else and then make more money off of its population. The other side of it, which is really painful, and you're going to see in America, which I didn't really touch on with the prices I quoted, if they were just passed on the price, would be 32% or 54%. That's not including the sales tax. Sales tax is in percentage. So, of course, if you buy something for 50p and then you buy it for £1, you've got to add the sales tax percentage on top. So the government gets even more from it. So the more expensive things are, the more money that the government makes. So again, it's something they really like. And obviously, it's a way of the government's making even more money without coming out and just raising taxes. It's just everything's got more expensive, but the tax rate on it, 20% in the UK, whatever you buy, if it's twice the price, well, their income tax has gone up, and then they make even more money, which then drives inflation up and all that kind of stuff. So the other side of it, and I'm trying to not really get too political about it, but one of the questions is like, why did he do it? What's the reason behind it? And it's quite interesting, and the one that I've been looking around at the most is, if you look at the American federal debt, it's so much, the 30 trillion, that the interest rates have obviously gone up quite a bit to try and cool the market. Well, this is crippling everything. This is crippling business and the governments itself. And obviously, Trump is a business guy. So he's looked at what they're spending on servicing that debt that they're paying. And I went and I got some figures for you. And in 2023, the US federal government paid 875 billion in interest. In 2024, it went up from 875 billion to 882 billion. Just interest. They get nothing for that. That's just servicing the debt that they already have. Now, if you go back just a few years, 5 years, and you look at 2019, the federal government paid 564 billion. So in 5 years, it's gone up 318 billion, or 56.38% increase in 5 years. It's got so high now that the US government is spending more on servicing its debt than it is on its own defense budget. So crashing the market makes sense if you want to drag down the interest rates. So there's a big incentive for them to do that, to lower the interest rates, because they're saving billions of pounds off of this servicing this debt. Now, is that cutting your arm off to save a couple of fingers? Well, only time's going to tell.